Riley, a person with avoidant attachment, has never been comfortable with emotional intimacy. To them, it always felt like a risk, something that could be used against them, something that could break them if they weren't careful. But as much as Riley pushed others away, they couldn't shake the yearning deep inside, the craving for something more than the solitude they had created. When they met Jordan, something shifted in them. Jordan was everything Riley wasn't: emotionally secure, comfortable with vulnerability, and not afraid of intimacy. They weren't chasing after Riley, but Riley couldn't stop thinking about them. They were the perfect paradox, the person who was emotionally present without demanding anything in return. And that, in itself, became an obsession. Riley had always prided themselves on their independence. After all, growing up, they learned quickly that emotional dependence was a path to disappointment. Their parents, while not neglectful, were distant and often preoccupied. Riley's emotional needs were rarely met, leading them to develop an attachment style that kept others at arm's length. When they left home and began building a life of their own, they learned that being emotionally detached made relationships easier to navigate. If you didn't need anyone, you couldn't get hurt. It was that simple. They built walls, wore armor, and kept their feelings tightly guarded. Love was something they had to earn or perform for, and even then, it was a gamble. Jordan was a whirlwind of calm. Riley had never met anyone like them. The first encounter had been at a mutual friends gathering. Jordan had arrived late but instantly commanded the room with their quiet confidence. They weren't the center of attention, but they didn't need to be. They simply were. They didn't force conversations, they didn't seek validation, they just interacted in a way that made Riley feel seen. What Riley didn't expect was that Jordan didn't chase them. Jordan wasn't the type to press for anything. They allowed people to come to them in their own time, in their own way. They didn't require constant reassurance, but rather offered a grounded, steady presence. Riley couldn't stop watching them. Everything about Jordan made them feel both anxious and at peace at the same time. This blend of emotions was intoxicating, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Over the following weeks, Riley began finding reasons to spend time around Jordan. At first, it was subtle, a passing comment, an invitation to a casual outing. But Riley found that every conversation left them more intrigued. Jordan's emotional openness was like a window into a world Riley had always avoided. There was something magnetic about how Jordan interacted with people, how they showed empathy without being consumed by it. Jordan wasn't afraid to show vulnerability. They spoke openly about their struggles, their emotions, and how they worked through their past. Unlike Riley, Jordan's openness didn't feel like an invitation for manipulation or dependency. It felt safe. And this safety was what Riley was terrified of. Being close to Jordan meant having to confront feelings they had long suppressed. As the weeks passed, Riley's thoughts started to revolve around Jordan. Every conversation, every moment they spent together, planted a seed of fixation. They started comparing everyone to Jordan. No one else seemed to have that same effortless calm, that same emotional strength, that ability to hold space for others. Riley found themselves admiring Jordan from afar, noting every small detail of how they interacted with the world, but it wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper, something more confusing. It was a longing. Riley felt a deep yearning for the kind of emotional connection Jordan offered, but it was terrifying. They had always believed that connection led to pain. It led to betrayal, neglect, and rejection. Yet with Jordan, they felt something different, the possibility of safety. This was the paradox they couldn't solve. They wanted the connection but feared it more than anything. The closer Jordan got, the more Riley recoiled. Jordan didn't demand attention. They didn't pressure Riley into being more than they were. Yet, Riley couldn't help but feel like they were failing every time Jordan reached out with genuine care. It was like Jordan's emotional presence was a mirror, reflecting everything Riley had hidden from themselves. Riley could no longer deny the attraction, nor could they ignore the pull they felt towards Jordan. But with that came fear, the fear of being known, the fear of someone seeing the broken pieces of them they had spent years hiding. The more Jordan showed up, the more Riley's defenses went up. It wasn't that they didn't want the connection, it was that they didn't know how to handle it. Vulnerability was the last thing Riley had learned to trust. One night, Riley snapped. They were lying in bed, unable to sleep, their mind racing with thoughts of Jordan. The longing, the anxiety, the fear, it all bubbled up. They were overwhelmed by the idea that Jordan could see them for who they truly were. They could feel themselves edging closer to a breaking point, and they didn't know how to stop it. Riley found themselves texting Jordan, asking for space, pulling back emotionally. They told themselves it was just a moment of weakness, that they were just trying to preserve their emotional safety. But deep down, they knew this wasn't just about needing space. It was about running from something they were too afraid to face. The emotional intimacy that Jordan represented terrified them, and it made them feel like they were being consumed by their own need for connection. The more Jordan was present in Riley's life, the more Riley's internal conflict deepened. They didn't want to lose Jordan, but they didn't know how to stay without sabotaging everything. Every time Jordan offered emotional support, Riley retreated, pushing them away to protect themselves from feeling too much. This behavior didn't make sense to Riley. They loved Jordan. They longed to be loved by them. But that love felt suffocating. It felt like a test Riley wasn't sure they could pass. They questioned their worthiness of such unconditional love. How could someone as emotionally available as Jordan love someone as closed off as them? Eventually, the emotional tug-of-war became too much. Riley's mind was consumed with thoughts of Jordan, what they meant to each other, and what would happen if Riley continued to push them away. They realized they were standing at a precipice, staring into the unknown, either continue to live in fear of intimacy or take the leap and trust in what Jordan had to offer. In a vulnerable moment, Riley confessed to Jordan their deepest fears, about love, about intimacy, about vulnerability. They spoke openly for the first time about the emotional walls they had built, walls that had kept everyone out for so long. Jordan listened, not with judgment but with understanding. They didn't offer solutions, they didn't try to fix Riley. They simply held space for them, allowing Riley to process their emotions without fear of being rejected. Over time, Riley began to realize that their obsession with Jordan wasn't about Jordan at all, it was about their own need for healing. They had been so focused on their attachment style, on their fear of intimacy, that they had never allowed themselves to trust someone else. Jordan had offered them the chance to heal, to experience love without fear, but Riley had to take the first step on their own. With Jordan's gentle support, Riley started to challenge their beliefs about love and connection. They began working on opening up, slowly letting go of the emotional armor they had carried for so long. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but Riley started to see that true intimacy didn't have to be terrifying. It could be a source of strength and growth. Even after the relationship with Jordan deepened, Riley found themselves replaying the moments of emotional safety, comparing every new partner to Jordan. The bond they shared became a benchmark for all future relationships. Although they've moved forward, the impact of Jordan's secure attachment remains with Riley forever. They learned that avoiding intimacy, while comforting in the short term, only created deeper isolation in the long term. The fixations on secure partners weren't just about attraction, they were about the need for healing, growth, and the possibility of authentic love. As Riley continues to navigate their tumultuous feelings for Jordan, the pressure begins to mount. The obsession that started as admiration and curiosity has morphed into something darker. Riley begins to feel that they are losing themselves in Jordan's emotional presence. Every time they let their guard down, every time they allow themselves to be vulnerable, it feels like they are dissolving, merging with Jordan's calmness. This paradox, wanting closeness while simultaneously fearing it, begins to take a toll on Riley's sense of self. They become distant, withdrawing even further from Jordan. The internal struggle intensifies as they wrestle with the idea that the more they love, the more they risk losing their identity. They've spent years constructing a sense of self based on independence and emotional detachment. The fear of being absorbed into someone else's emotional world becomes overwhelming. One evening, after a particularly intense moment of connection with Jordan, Riley experiences a moment of panic. The desire for intimacy becomes suffocating. It feels like a flood of emotions that they can't control. Jordan, sensing the shift, remains patient but doesn't push. However, this lack of pressure only increases Riley's sense of fear. They pull away from Jordan once again, creating a rift that feels impossible to bridge. They fear that by opening up too much, they will lose everything that made them Riley. In the aftermath of their latest retreat from Jordan, Riley is left alone with their thoughts, spiraling into a deep state of confusion. The walls Riley built around themselves now feel like a prison. The longing for connection hasn't gone away. If anything, it has intensified. But the fear of what that connection might cost, of what it might reveal about them, has taken hold in a way that feels inescapable. One night, unable to sleep, Riley ventures out into the night. The streets are quiet, and the cool air bites at their skin. Riley walks without purpose, trying to outrun their thoughts. They find themselves at a small, secluded park, an unlikely place for anyone to be at this hour. But as they sit on a bench, they notice something strange. The air around them seems to shimmer, and the stars above twinkle in a way they've never seen before. It's as if the world itself is holding its breath, and then it happens. Something completely inexplicable. A figure appears before them, but it's not just any figure. It's Jordan. Not physically, but somehow, magically. Jordan stands before Riley, not as a person but as a glowing, ethereal presence, glowing with a soft golden light. Their form shimmers, but their essence is unmistakable, calm, stable, emotionally open. Riley, struck by both awe and disbelief, stands up, unable to speak. The air feels thick with energy, and Riley can feel their heart beating in time with the pulsating glow. Riley, the voice resonates, though Jordan's lips don't move. The sound comes from the air around them, like a whisper carried on the wind. You are not alone. You never were. Riley feels a deep tremor inside. But, you're not real. This can't be real. Jordan's ethereal form smiles, and the smile is filled with understanding. I am as real as your desire for connection. As real as the fear that holds you back. I am part of you, Riley. The part of you that yearns to be seen, to be loved, and to love freely. But you must face yourself to see me clearly. Riley steps back, trembling. I don't understand. I can't trust this. I can't trust myself. Jordan's form begins to shimmer and pulse, like a heartbeat syncing with Riley's own. The truth you seek is within you. You have always had the power to heal, to open yourself to love. But first, you must confront your deepest fear, the fear of being truly known. The fear that someone will see the parts of you that you've hidden for so long. The world around Riley starts to blur as the shimmering figure of Jordan becomes a part of the landscape, weaving into the night like a dream that is both fading and deepening. You have to let go, Jordan's voice echoes, let go of the past that defines you. The walls you built are the very chains that keep you from experiencing the love you crave. With those final words, the figure of Jordan dissolves into the air, leaving Riley standing alone in the park, but changed. Something has shifted within them, a deep knowing, a realization. Riley understands now that the obsession with Jordan wasn't just about their perfect qualities, it was about Riley's own deep-seated need for connection, for someone to help them see and heal the parts of themselves they had long avoided. The next morning, Riley wakes with a strange feeling. It's as if they've had a vivid dream, but the feeling lingers, deep and inexplicable. They feel a newfound sense of clarity, a shift in perspective that they can't quite place. It's almost like the world has opened up in a way they never thought possible. The walls they've built around themselves are no longer solid, they feel porous, like they're crumbling from within. Riley picks up the phone and, for the first time in weeks, texts Jordan. The message is simple but heartfelt: "I'm ready to be seen. I'm ready to let you in." They wait, breathless, for a response. Jordan doesn't hesitate. The reply comes almost immediately: "I never left, Riley. I've always been here, waiting for you to see the truth." Riley's heart races as they read the message. They had been running from themselves, from the very thing they desired most. The shift inside them was profound, and it had been there all along, waiting to be uncovered. But as they sit back, feeling a sense of calm wash over them, a thought strikes them. Was it really just a dream? Or was there something more magical at play, something that defied explanation? Had they truly seen Jordan, or had their subconscious finally broken through the barriers they'd built to protect themselves? It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they were no longer afraid. No longer running from the connection they needed. And the person they had been obsessing over, the one who had drawn them in so deeply, was not just a partner. They were a mirror, a reflection of the love Riley had always been capable of but had never allowed themselves to experience. Riley smiles softly, staring at the phone. A magical understanding blooms within them. True intimacy wasn't a destination, it was a journey. And the path had just begun. Days, weeks, and months go by, and Riley's relationship with Jordan deepens. It's not always perfect. There are still moments of fear and doubt, but Riley no longer runs from them. Instead, they face them head-on, knowing that they are worthy of love. The bond they share is built on a foundation of emotional honesty and vulnerability, and it is stronger than anything Riley has ever known. In a quiet moment, as Riley sits with Jordan, watching the sun set on another day, they realize something profound. The journey they've been on, of healing, growth, and connection, was not just about them and Jordan. It was about their own soul, finally opening up to the love that had always been there, waiting to be accepted. The last piece of the puzzle falls into place as Riley smiles softly, knowing that the magical moment they experienced in the park was not just a dream. It was the truth of their own transformation, a journey that began with fear but led to the discovery of a love that was as real as the stars in the sky.